What's a good word, everyone? It's your boy DKB here. I just want to say thanks for all the support. The channel's been steadily growing, and the number you see below, you can drop a text, shoot a voicemail, any ideas, topics, collabs, etc. you guys want to see. I'll include them in future videos and live streams, and I'll catch you again. Be easy. What's the good word, Jets fans? It's your boy DKB here, and we're diving into the New York Jets 4th round pick wide receiver Arian Smith out of Georgia, aka the Jet. And this is really, it's hard to even call it a boom or bust pick, right? There's been so many negatives, such a bad stigma attached to Arian Smith, and objectively speaking, for good reason. Your primary skill set should be the one that we could be most comfortable with, and then you can talk about projections and upside and stuff. But with Arian Smith, the black and white of it is the hands are downright terrible, and it's intriguing because I do seriously still think that Dante Thornton would have been the pick here if he was still on the board. But even just in general, when it comes to trying to find a speed threat for this offense, you could have went with other guys, and they might not have the 4.36 40 that Arian Smith had, and he might not clock the same type of GPS numbers as he has. But you have to feel like the overall skill set of many other wide receivers would have been better, which is why there was a pretty consistent round 6, round 7, even undrafted free agent projection for Arian Smith. But I don't really care about the semantics of how early we picked him, right? It's not on the level of picking a kicker in the 2nd round or anything crazy like this, right? The Jets have belief in him, and after taking a look, there are some positive signs about his game and the element that he can bring outside of speed to this team. But I think it's pretty clear that you're looking at him as a vertical threat, and if this staff can find a way to coax a more complete skill set out of him as a receiver, then so be it. But with that said, we are looking at him at 6 foot and somewhere around 179, 184-ish pounds. So pretty light. The build is a little bit off in my opinion, right? For instance, I'm probably about 5'10", 5'11". And I think in my heyday playing basketball in college, I got up to about 180, 185. So him having a couple inches on me, you would imagine that he can hold probably an extra 10, 15 pounds and not sacrifice much of that speed. At the very least, he's going to need to work on getting a lot stronger with that frame. But he brings a track background, ran the 4x100 meter relay, ran the 100 meter, ran the 200 meter. He even participated in long jumps. And I think the 200 meters where he walked away with an award on, and the 100 meters where he finished 2nd. But either way, between high school and Georgia, where you're talking about him racing some of the fastest humans on earth, this is legit speed, right? I know it might not be the earth-shattering, 4.2 numbers that we see occasionally come out, but it still feels like there was some time left out there on the clock. That's probably not the best way to put it. He feels like he should be like a 4.2 guy with the speed that he's actually running at. We'll leave it at that. But even going back into high school, this guy is relatively raw as a receiver and has never really been able to focus purely on that. Even dating back to his time in Georgia, his handful of years in there. But high school, he ended up playing quarterback, running back, DB, and wide receiver. So it makes a ton of sense, right? It's not the same. He's really a track guy that's moonlighting as a wide receiver, and not a wide receiver that has track speed, right? And I think that's the biggest issue that people should take umbrage with here when it comes to Arian Smith and him being the draft pick. But he could still carve out a role, right? When you look at guys like Marquise Goodwin and what some of these other speed element type guys have been able to contribute to offenses, there's definitely a need for it, just depending on how some of those are built. So he may never be the guy that's a clear number 2 wide receiver for us, but for how I expect that we plan to use him, he's going to be, I don't know if he'll ever justify the pick, right? But he will at least bring some big playability, and he's going to be able to open things up for everybody else. So not what you want out of a guy potentially in the 4th round, where you could still say it's not a long shot to find a wide receiver that can contribute. But also, just because we're lacking in the receiver room, it's a little rough, right? You don't want a guy that you have to project this much for, but it is what it is. He did lead his team in receiving. We have to remember Brock Bowers, Ladd McConkey in previous years have been there, so there hasn't been a ton of need for him, right, over his 5 years being at Georgia. And when things finally turned to him his 5th year, he was finally healthy. Things were looking ahead for him. He at least ended up being able to step up to some degree. An 11-game starter is, I find it interesting because I guess people bought into the athleticism wherever he's been, because he did come into college as a former 4-star recruit, did earn a combine invite, did get a Senior Bowl invite. And so for what it's worth, obviously there's a bunch of traits that coaching staffs are going to be drooling over here with him. Put on a show at the combine, right? Obviously the 40 is the big number, but he had a elite 10-yard split as well. Agility numbers looked really, really great. And surprisingly, he's borderline elite when it comes to his broad jump and vertical numbers and stuff like that. So there's some explosion that you can unlock out of his body. In 2024, he put up 48 catches for 817 yards and 4 touchdowns. Now, you can talk about your Isaiah Bonds of the world in this draft, right? Which I think is someone else we seriously wanted to look at after getting Arian Smith. I say us as fans only because I think he is arguably a player that people felt more comfortable with. He came with his own drama, right? I think Isaiah Bonds is fighting a sexual assault charge or something wild like that, which is why he went undrafted. But Arian Smith, consistently raw, right? We talked about it. Coming out of high school, didn't really get a chance to focus on wide receiver. Really didn't even get a ton of focus on it, I would argue, until his 5th year at Georgia, because between injuries and between just the players ahead of him, he didn't see much time on the field. Only had 20 catches over his first 4 years. So you're not talking about a robust sample size. And then again, him being a 5th-year senior, people aren't going to love that final year of tape all that much. It definitely was athleting out there on the field more than anything. But the drop rate, that's what people are going to be consistently held up on, right? And it's improved, but it's still absolutely terrible. So for comparison's sake here, before we talk about some of these numbers, I think the general range of the average drop rate in the NFL is somewhere between 3 and 5%. Very loose numbers here, right? Now, in Arian Smith's case, in 2022, for example, he had a 27.3% drop rate. Absolutely insane that over 1 out of every 4 balls that come his way, for example, is hitting earth. He got that down by the time 2024 rolled around and got that to a 17% drop rate, but still astronomical when you're talking about essentially 3 to 4 times the average rate that you're going to see once he gets to the NFL. So a clear amount of work that needs to get done there. What I will say is taking a look at a lot of what happened, I think there's a mentality piece to it, which I think Aaron Glenn and his staff have a good chance of being able to try to dive into and fix. And then there's a technical component to it, which we'll talk about, that also seems fixable. So you'd like to have seen it be repaired a lot more over the course of college, but just not enough experience and opportunity for him to really get that done. For what it's worth, the coaching staff did have really good things to say about him in terms of the overall player and character, so we'll chat about that as well. But he made Bruce Feldman's freak list as well. He was ranked number 39. One of the things that I like to see that was pulled out from that report that was drafted up from him was he consistently hit 23 miles per hour on the GPS, and I don't think anybody on our team has topped over like 22 miles per hour. And I think the guy that owns our fastest speed record, ironically, is Brandon Echols on like a pick 6. So this is eye-popping, right? This is a guy that if you mess up in any phase of your technique guarding Arian Smith, considering he's mostly running vertical routes, you're going to pay for it. Only went to Georgia, so that is a huge plus. Illustrious program. Obviously, you like the coaching staff, the pedigree, the players that he's been around. So a lot of stuff for him to pick up on. And he might not be getting coached by a Brian Hartline, for example. But again, Ladd McConkey in recent memory coming out, Georgia's been able to produce some receiving talent. Injury-wise, this is really what hampered him a ton in terms of being able to overcome stuff. But as he called out himself, I think the mental fortitude is really going to be a huge calling card for him. Even wanting to continue playing football in the midst of all these injuries, on top of the fact that you're not getting playing time, and the fact that realistically, many on the outside looking in are going to say you suck. A broken wrist coming in, which he had to get surgery on coming into Georgia. A torn meniscus and broken right fibula in 2021. A high ankle sprain in 2022. An ankle fracture at the end of 2022. And then various toe and hip type injuries over the course of 2023 and 2024. So from top to bottom, right, he's just been getting beaten up, which is why you say he needs to add a little bit onto that frame to be able to endure some of these things a little bit more. And like the toe, ankle stuff, that's hard to contribute towards the body frame and how he's built. But for things like the knee and the broken wrist, potentially, I would say that's more feasible. But things that he's done well, it's not a ton, but still, diving heavily into the tape, you can pick up on some things that you've at least seen flashes, if not some consistency to. Obviously, the speed is going to be the calling card here. He is going to be a guy that, regardless of how great or poor the hands are, you need to put a safety over the top. So immediately off the jump, he hits the field. You are getting an advantage out there in terms of opening up the middle of the field, really the boundaries. Anything that requires having that safety, you have to trail him as well. Can punish people on jet sweeps and screen opportunities, and I think that's kind of his immediate role. If you look at what he can be, I think if you give Arian Smith the same kind of routes that LaFleur was giving Elijah Moore when we had him, I would argue that Arian Smith could be more productive even with the drop. So that's kind of what I'm envisioning in my head, and we'll see if that ends up sticking true. A solid release package overall. I think he understands how he needs to set DBs up to open up that vertical route tree, because whether you're a one-trick pony or not, you still need to be able to get the job done. He's going to be a guy that understands how to get open, how to stack those DBs, and how to be able to get himself in play to make a play on the ball. It's everything that happens after that's a problem, right? Decent ability to track the ball across multiple levels. Mostly all of his stuff is going to be vertical, but there are times, short slants against screens and such that you are seeing from the short to intermediate range where he can go and, back shoulder throws and such and figure out how to be able to get himself in the proper position. He's going to bring special teams experience, and this is where he's going to have to earn himself some kind of playing time while he looks to get on the field. Still can't figure out where we place him on the depth chart, for example, but returner and gunner experience on punt teams. OC Mike Bobo quoted him as having great leadership and work ethic, and really one of the top tier just character guys on that Georgia football team, especially in the vacancy of not having McConkey or Bowers anymore. And he's a solid to plus blocker overall, and considering the build, considering that you love to see more physicality within his game, that is good news, and honestly still kind of puts him in rare air in terms of separating himself a bit from this receiving class. But getting into some of the concerns. Lacking strength to fight for the ball in contested catches. So you're going to continue to see string stuff pop up over the course of, his year one rookie season. Probably is comfortable saying that he has the worst hands in college, right? Not only does he not have natural hands, he's a chest catcher. One of the illest parts about people, wide receivers specifically, right, that have an inability to catch is it's a confidence killer, not only to the coaching staff, because now you really have to rethink a ton of the plays that you want to draw up. It's a confidence killer to the rest of the receiving core, the offensive line. When you see the ball coming their way, you're not expecting, much, if anything. And for the quarterback specifically, you're essentially wiping a target out of the progression, because you don't want to have to take a 50-50 chance, or even if it's open, you don't want to, essentially think about there being an incomplete pass before the ball even leaves your hand. So that's going to be something he seriously has to work at. But I think from a technique standpoint, and we said the same thing kind of about Dante Thornton, is that he is a like a wide hands catcher, right? Not only is it coming late, but he's essentially kind of doing one of these and looking to clasp onto the ball at the last minute, as opposed to having that diamond technique, right? And you're looking for the ball to hit it, and then you're just waiting about securing it. So this is a consistency thing that this coaching staff is going to have to work out of him. But again, he hasn't caught a ton of balls on his routes, so I can't imagine you're doing too much rework, if anything, with him. But easily can be thrown off the routes. Again, playing versus physical DBs, you can see him get rerouted. You can see them knock off the timing. You can see him even get kind of pushed out of certain plays. A slow decelerator, so for as much speed and all of that acceleration that he has, he's not really a twitched up guy. So especially when he's having to stop and kind of break on a dime, you're going to see a lot of wasted and unnecessary steps and movement from him. And overall, as a route runner, I would even argue that he lacks precision and sharp breaks and cuts in him. So he's an interesting tape watch just for trying to find any semblance of hope with him. And I'm still not even ready to say he's a complete bust or that this is a guy that I have some level of confidence in. But I think you look at guys with maybe similar concerns coming into the league, and for us, you're going to throw out your Stephen Hills and Devin Smith, but literally from a physical build, usage, experience standpoint and all that, I think guys like Colby Listenby and Chris Harper would be some similar names. And well, hopefully if we can get a Marquise Goodwin, I would consider it a win. Obviously you want him to do a lot more, but we'll have to see how it pans out. Let me know what you guys think about Arian Smith here, though. How does he project his offense? Do you have any hope whatsoever with him? And I'll catch you guys again. Peace.